Hello and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true and open debate you've been looking for. For the next few weeks, the government will have to defend its new budget. The Minister of Finance says while the economy is expanding, the reality is that recovery is not occurring at the pace previously projected. There was a $240 million revenue shortfall in last year's budget. That was 9% lower than projected. Yet revenue increased by $373 million, due mainly to the increase in VAT. We can look forward to $28 million in reductions in customs revenue this year with the promise of no new taxes. As we continue our series on the new budget tonight, we talk to the man who has been championing this budget while defending it from opposition groups who have been on the attack. My guest tonight is the Minister of Finance. Our topic, keeping account, understanding the 2019-2020 budget. It's all on the record tonight. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our discussion begins on the other side of this break. Hello and welcome to On the Record, a balanced, true and open debate you've been looking for. The budget is a good gauge of the country's economic health and stability. Every year at this time, the government presents and begins debate on the annual budget. This is when all of the plans for the year are laid out for public consumption and scrutiny. We also pay close attention to the budget in an attempt to help you understand what it all means. I'm happy to once again welcome the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the Honourable Peter Turnquest, as we keep an account understanding the 2019-2020 budget. Minister, DPM, welcome.
Thank you.
We're making this a tradition now to have you on the show, and it's because we have always determined that this in many ways is a litmus test for government, for where you are and certainly where the country is going to be moving over the next 12 months. One of the things that you said during the presentation of the budget, while the economy is expanding, the reality is that recovery is not occurring at the pace previously projected. I want us to put that into context and help the audience to understand what does that mean. Despite the outlook and the fact that things seem to be going well, there is still this concern that we are not recovering. And from what period are we recovering?
Right. So first off, it's always a pleasure to be here. And one of the things that we have been committed to is this transparency and accountability and being available to the Bahamian public to try and explain some of these challenges that we face, as well as the opportunities. When we talk about the economy is not growing as fast as we would like it, every year we set out a budget. And in part of that budget is our revenue estimates, which based upon what we see on the horizon in terms of developments, both domestically and internationally, the policies that we intend to initiate, we make an estimation of what we believe that our total revenue will be as a government and what our GDP growth would look like. Because of different events that may happen during the year, you can achieve it or you may fall short. And that's no different than any business out there. Every year you make your projections, and depending on how things go, you may land a contract and meet your projections or you may not. The same thing happens here because you don't control a lot of the elements. But when we talk about the fact that it's not falling through to the masses, I guess, or the person on the ground, there's always going to be a lag between GDP growth and jobs on the ground, or money in your pocket, as they call it. But there is a direct link. Because as the economy grows, more and more opportunities become available. Individuals will start to be employed, which will then drive consumer demand, which drives additional jobs, which drives savings and ability of consumers to spend. And we see that in this Department of Statistics recent report, where they show that household consumption has gone up over the last year. Again, reflecting the fact that there is, in fact, more money in circulation. So I do want to debunk the myth that GDP growth is just an abstract number that doesn't have any consequence or meaning to the local economy. It is a direct indication of how well the economy is doing.
And they will say, well, what does this mean for me?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we hear that. And anybody that is struggling or has not been able to find the job in this economy, they feel it. So, we don't discount that at all, because that is their reality. But when we look at the whole economy and how factors are being affected, we can see that there is a general improvement in the overall economy year over year. And that's reflected in the 1.6% growth that we had. It's reflected in the fact that at the Department of Inland Revenue, they are projecting, or they're showing that they have increased business licenses, new business licenses of 3,777 just for the last year alone. That's new businesses being started.
3,000 plus.
Yeah, 3,700.
Wow.
That is being started. So it says, again, there's opportunity. It says that people are taking advantage of this growing economy, and they're finding ways to slip in where they may not be able to find a job. They're finding entrepreneurial opportunities to take advantage of what's happening.
And business growth in an economy is always good. I mean, we always hear that small business growth is really the engine of the economy. But one of the things that I want to talk about is the shortfall, 240 million shortfall in revenue, which is 9% lower than projected. You talk about sort of using the business model, but if I'm in business and my revenue falls short, that's a concern for me in my business. How did this happen, and at what point, what were the indicators that we were going to fall short? And how do we, what's the plan to recover?
So again, the GDP or growth forecast is based upon a whole series of economic indicators. All right, we look at the strength of the U.S. economy in our context, as it is a direct kind of indicator of what we can expect from the tourism industry. We look at Europe to see what's happening there. We look at oil prices. We look at other macroeconomic indicators to determine and project how we think that our industries will grow, in particular our leading drivers, tourism and financial services. And again, there is always a lag between the external markets and our economy. The number that we settled on as projected growth, 2.1, 2.3%, was done in connection with considering all of these factors, as well as the International Monetary Fund, which would have come and done their Article 4, and they would have made their projections based upon what they would know, or based upon their experience from our own local domestic economy, as well as from the international economy, and they made their projections. And we do as I say, we do our internal assessments. We would we know, for instance, that there are projects that are starting or that we have approved. And so we would make projections based upon what we anticipate will be the start dates for some of these projects and these other investments. And you may have situations where, even though tourism is surging, some of the other factors may be lagging. So we might not have had the construction starts in some of the projects that we had anticipated to start. Or there may be other issues around various investments that may slow the start of this growth that we anticipated. Doesn't mean that it's not there. It's just that, for whatever reason, things have held. So again, what I want to emphasize is to the public is that this is very much a art as it is a science in terms of trying to determine what your growth rates are going to be. You make those based upon sound economic data and principles, based upon factors that you are aware of, factors that you expect based upon what you read into the international community, with the support of international agencies to determine and to support and give validity to your assumptions, and you make the projection. But it is not a negative or should not be read as some negative or some factor of the government not doing its thing, because again these are projections. You can no more determine who is going to come to your shop and buy as you can determine what the GDP is going to be.
So taking that into consideration, but again, if I'm going to use the business model, if I'm projecting revenue, then I'm projecting some things that will happen as a result of that. So my question now is, how is this shortfall in revenue going to affect other things? Because again, in business, if I'm expecting 10 million and 8 comes in, that means some things I was planning to do, I can't.
Exactly.
So in the budgetary context and in the national context, this significant, you're talking about 240 million, what have you not been able to do, or what will you not be able to do as a result of the shortfall?
Sure. So let's make sure we don't overstate it. It's 9.9% or thereabouts of a shortfall. So it is not material in the wider sense. We've been able to meet all of our commitments, including paying down, I think it's $127 million of arrears, bills that have been piling up for years, and some of them go back as far as 10, 12 years that have not been paid. So we've made tremendous advancements. Consider if we did not have that to pay, what we could have done. All right, the investments we could have made in education and health and infrastructure,
still paying back bills.
Exactly, right. Irresponsible fiscal management, quite frankly, right. But be it as it may, when we, as we go through the year, we're constantly monitoring to see what our revenue intake is, what our cash flow looks like, and making tweaks to our spending plan to ensure that we do not outspend our revenue. So you asked the question, what did we have to cut back? Well, I think it's no secret that we've had to hold back on some of the capital works that we anticipated doing. We have not invested in, I'm trying to think now, education. There's some repairs, work that need to be done with education that we have to do this year. Minimal stuff, quite frankly. We've not had any major cuts or cutbacks on our spending plan. There are some projects that we had anticipated doing that did not get done. Like, for instance, we'd anticipated hiring 30 accountants and some other persons throughout the public service. It didn't get done for one reason or the other. We held back some of the priority projects that we had put forth, the investment in renewable energy, some of these things that are discretionary. All right, but by and large, nothing that would have affected the Bahamian people, that would have affected the level of service that we provide, or the real priority projects that we wanted to put forward.
One of the areas that you've touted that you've been on target for is meeting the deficit target. And I always ask this question: what does that translate into for the average person? I hear that, oh great, we've met that target, we've impacted the deficit, but I look at my own experience and go, okay, so how does this impact my life?
Right. So that impacts your life directly in the medium to long term. In that the level of deficit ties to the borrowing. So the higher that deficit number is, the more we have to borrow, right? And we've seen our recent past where we've had to borrow significant amounts of money just to cover our revenue shortfalls, right? This last year, we had $237 million we projected as a deficit, meaning that we would earn less, 237 million less than we actually had to spend. And we had to borrow that, right? Or some of it anyway. And we're expecting to come in a little bit less than that. But deficit is important in that it helps to control the level of borrowing, which translates into national debt, which is somewhere in the 70% range at the moment, which is high for our peers. Our peers are around the 53% range, and we need to come down. Because one, It speaks to our ability to borrow and what the cost of borrowing will be as a result, because the higher that rate gets, the more risk the lenders factor in, the higher the interest rate is going to be. But in addition to that, we need to be able to respond in the event that we have a natural disaster or some other event. And if our debt is too high, we're either going to find it very difficult to borrow, particularly in a crisis situation, or we're going to pay, significantly for it. In addition to that, when we talk about this lower deficit, it is also talking about the ability or our management of the fiscal affairs of the country. It is a true barometer of how well we are spending the money that the Bahamian people entrust us to spend on their behalf.
Before we go into our first break, I'm going to ask, I think it was George Bush who said, read my lips, no new taxes. So there were no new tax categories, no increase in value-added tax. And a huge sigh of relief for a lot of us, and there was even some speculation from the other side that this would happen. But you've determined that there will be no new taxes. Again, how is that going to affect the overall revenue, at the end of the day? Because you would have seen an increase in revenue this year, largely due to the increase in value-added tax. But why the decision to not introduce any new taxes?
So we have seen an increase in revenue, about 16%, I believe it is, year over year. The reality is, in last year, when we put forth our 3-year fiscal strategy, our plan, we projected out what we thought we would need in terms of revenue to meet our arrears, as well as to be able to provide the level of service, or continue to provide the level of services that the Bahamian people need and require. So when we did that, we recognized that, and that's how we set the rate, by the way, with respect to what the value-added tax rate would have been. We just did our projections based upon what we knew would be our commitments over the next 3 years.
So you knew you'd have to take in X amount, and so you set the VAT accordingly.
Exactly. So when being faithful to that plan, we have managed our expenditure, which is the one thing that we can, for the most part, control. We've managed that to make sure that we stay within the limits that we promised the Bahamian people we would. And we've put in the fiscal responsibility legislation to help us ensure that we are disciplined with respect to that promise that we've made to the Bahamian people. When we consider the 3-year plan, it's been successful thus far, as we've seen with the numbers. It's been successful when we look at the growth, GDP growth, even though it may not hit 2.1 that we expected. We're at 1.6% real growth. And that is significant, coming off of 5 years of negative or flatline growth. We see where the plan is falling into place as we start to get our fiscal house in order and things are beginning to strengthen. So we saw no reason to, or any need for any additional taxes. What we do need is to build in the discipline around the collection of the taxes that are on the books. Because unfortunately, Bahamians, I guess people in general, don't like to pay taxes. And I shouldn't say that because somebody has reminded me when I said that the last time that it's not that they don't want to pay taxes, they just want to know that their taxes are being applied faithfully and for the things that that you say you're going to spend it on. And that's what we've been trying to build a credibility around our fiscal plan and the way that we have managed government finances as a whole. Because there is a tremendous trust deficit in government that's been building for years. And unfortunately, even though you're trying to do the right thing, you still get whipped with that stick. And so it's going to take a few years for us to build the trust with the Bahamian people. And that's why we're so important. So we think it's so important that we are transparent and we provide the Bahamian people with all of the information they need in order to make these kind of assessments and hold us accountable. Because we want, at the end of the day, even if we're not the government in the next term, that the Bahamian people can believe in their government. That they can trust that when the government says it's going to do X, it's going to do X.
That's a huge uphill battle.
It is, and I recognize that. But again, bit by bit, we try to build credibility into the system. Again, we're faithful to our fiscal consolidation plan, our medium-term plan, which has been independently reviewed and supported. And we do not see any need for any additional taxes as long as we collect the taxes that are on the books.
To collect the taxes that are already due. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more on the record right after this.
Matt, where in the world is Matt Lauer? Where in the world is Ellison Greenslade? And so it's about the
Listen,
while you were concentrating in Atlanta. So we can talk about
More on the record tonight. The government's purchase of the Grand Lukine is a hot subject in the news. We're going to...
This portion of On the Record is brought to you by Generali Insurance Company Limited, your employee benefit specialist.
The annual budget debate will be the focus of parliamentary debate over the next few weeks. There will be a lot of information to digest and understand. There will be some challenges we expect from the opposition, and no doubt long explanations and rationalizations on how the people's money is being spent. We wanted to give you a jump start in understanding what it all means here on the record. My guest tonight is Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the Honourable Peter Turnquest. Our topic, keeping account, understanding the 2019-2020 budget. Minister, revenue increased by $373 million, led primarily by VAT and the increase in VAT. Outside of that, were there any other things that contributed to the rise in revenue? I mean, VAT was obviously a natural increase. Yep. We're all paying more. We would expect you to take it more.
Sure. So stamp tax also increased on realty transactions, which again is a very healthy sign that the economy is in fact picking up because it's new construction, it's new conveyances. Both domestic and second homeowners. So that's a positive sign. We've also had an increase in general use taxes. So that's just various things like stamp tax on financial transactions and these kind of things. So overall, it's been a relatively broad-based increase. Some of it is, I would say, a lot of it is due to the increase in the rate, but we also see a general pickup in the economy overall, which is driving revenues.
Government is still, as you admitted in the last segment, challenged in collecting revenue in some areas. How do you plan on tightening that up? I think you alluded to some of that in the last segment. And are you going to go after those people who have the ability to pay and aren't paying? No,
absolutely. We're already taking some significant actions in this regard, and I think we try to keep these matters as private as possible because we don't want to expose people's business. It's not about that. But you're going to see, I think, some actions relatively shortly, significant actions where we try to collect. But in addition to that, we're also building our revenue enhancement unit team to go after some of these areas where we know that there are leakages, whether it's in customs or in business license or value-added tax or real property tax. We are building teams specifically to go after these areas to ensure that, again, we are getting the taxes that are due to us. We're also looking at new revenue sources, which is really one of the things that excites me, because we know that there are taxes on the books that we have not been collecting for years, and the public is to be commended because they were the ones that kind of highlighted this to us in terms of the urgency of us taking action on it. For instance, with respect to the cruise ship, the yacht cruising industry, where persons may be coming to the Bahamas and paying their charter fee, a cruising fee, but they're not registering as a charter. And so they come to the Bahamas, they bringing people with them and taking them on cruises throughout the Bahamas.
Paying for it.
And they're supposed to pay 4% of the charter fee in taxes to the government. We've not been collecting it because we've not been able to track them. And so we are building a technology platform that is going to be able to not only track these vessels, but also facilitate the payment of these fees. And the same with fishing licenses and hunting licenses. These will all now be online, and people will be able to book these before they even arrive in the Bahamas.
So these are taxes that have been in place that you will now be collecting.
Correct.
One of the things I read in your presentation as well is that you will be going after taxes for, I think it's vacation rentals,
Correct.
Airbnb.
Right. This is a globally emerging issue where the developments in technology are such that people can be conducting business from their house somewhere in Timbuktu and providing services in your market. It's services that would have traditionally been domestic based here, and you would have been able to tax them here. And the air or vacation home rentals is similar kind of situation. The provider is in the United States or elsewhere selling a product, and the people come to the Bahamas and they stay in a home or wherever it is. The revenue never touches the Bahamas. Meanwhile, you've got the hotels that are domestic here, based here.
It's affecting their business
Correct.
as well.
Yeah. And so there is a bit of a competition mismatch there. And not only that, but it's eroding our tax base. And this is a global phenomenon, and that's what you saw with this base erosion and profit shifting initiative that the European Union has been after over the last year, and we've been jumping through hoops to ensure that we are compliant internationally. So what we've decided is that, listen, we recognize that there's activity happening in the local market, and I saw something where I think it's in the newspaper today, where the vacation home rental business has gone up, I think it's 18% or something over the year. So it is a growing phenomena. And the good news about that is that these are Bahamians who are by and large benefiting from that growth. And so that's going directly into the pocket
it's a new
of
market
Bahamians.
in many
and that's
instances,
fantastic. And we want to encourage that. But by the same token, we recognize that we're losing tax revenue as a result of it. And in addition to that, we are being causing an uncompetitive environment for the hotels.
So the taxes are going to be due from the hosting company, the company that has the site that you can go on to book. So basically, Airbnb would owe the government of the Bahamas taxes.
Correct. So and that's important note to make. The local provider, the hotel, the room, or the house, or
right. So if I'm the homeowner and I'm renting out a space,
you're not required to pay anything.
I'm not paying the taxes.
You get the same revenue that you were getting before from the Airbnbs or VRBOs or whoever it is. But those foreign providers, those platforms, marketplaces as we call them, they are now required to register with the Bahamas. And to collect value-added tax from their customers, which they then remit to the Bahamas. And I'm happy to say that one of the providers has already agreed and is paying. Good news. And so that is going to be new revenue, if you will, for us. And we're very happy about that because, again, I can see that this is going to become more and more of a challenge as we go further and further into this digital world that exists.
And that's just one instance. I'm sure there are going to be other services, and there are other services being provided by foreign entities in the Bahamas that we are not collecting any taxes on. Yeah.
That's
so
correct.
That's going to be
and again, this is as I say, a global challenge. The OECD has picked it up. The UN has just recently picked it up as an issue because these countries recognize that their tax bases are also going to be affected. And so what we've decided here is that we will tax based upon where the benefit is derived. So since the benefit from these activities is derived in the Bahamas, we believe that we deserve the taxation for
Good to hear. 28 million in reductions in customs revenue. How did you decide sort of what you were going to cut? I see things like refrigerators, stoves, a lot of school supplies, customs revenue being cut on. But how did you, and what was the rationalization in cutting customs revenues on these items?
So again, if you go back to our fiscal plan, we said that as we start to pay down these arrears, we will use the savings to bring tax relief to the Bahamian people. So this is sort of a pay down on that promise. So we've paid 127 million of those arrears. We're giving back $28 million in cuts. And what we did is we went through customs with the most frequently imported items, And we saw, we tried to see where we can bring those
And there
rates
was
down.
furniture as well, too.
Correct.
Which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, so we tried to see how we can bring those down. Bearing in mind that we did not want to go below whatever offer may have been made with respect to WTO and all of that. But we wanted to provide whatever direct relief we could. So that's the rationale behind that.
And I've got to ask this now, is it equitable, given that we're paying an additional 60% in value-added taxes? Where's the balance? I mean, I look at myself, I don't buy furniture every day, you don't buy a refrigerator or a stove every day. School supplies once a year. So I go back to, okay, I'm paying this increase in value-added tax on everything, but then you do have this reduction in customs, but is it equitable? Am I still going to feel it at some point?
Yeah, I think so. All of us who have children know what the cost of going back to school is.
Yeah. Children, godchildren, neighbors, we all know.
Right. But in addition to that, we have given significant reductions in the value-added tax for the quote-unquote marginalized and challenged, financially challenged families. When you talk about the reduction or the elimination of VAT on medicines, on tuitions, on electricity, on water. And by the way, I'm going to correct a statement that I made in my communication, where I said 23,000 homes had been affected by the elimination or the elimination of value-added tax on electricity bills, $300 or less. It's actually 79,000. So we actually exceeded our projection on families that would
that's now a permanent.
Directly. Right? Yeah, and it's permanent.
And it's permanent.
Right. So we've given direct relief, the bread basket, direct relief to the most vulnerable communities. Now, those of us who spend more, who can afford to spend more, yes, the truth of the matter is, as a percentage of tax of our income, we are going to pay more tax because we spend more, right? And that's only fair. But for the families who have found that they are on that poverty line or below, they should see a reduction in their overall cost of living.
Should see.
Yeah, because we've eliminated 7.5% on what they eat, for the most part, their electricity, their water, their medicines, their school supplies for their children. So most of what is, and I'm going to use this word carefully, most of what is needed to sustain a decent quality of life, we've actually reduced the cost on.
So in the last budget, when you were here a year ago, we talked about the removal of customs duties on bread basket items. Can you say with any certainty that these savings have been passed along to the people who need them most? Because I'm always concerned that, okay, you've removed the customs duties. We have a lot of unscrupulous store owners out there. We have a lot of unscrupulous people who, despite what reductions they receive at the border, prices aren't affected. I mean, what are you doing or what's government doing to ensure that these savings are being passed along? Same thing with school supplies now, furniture, things of this nature. Is there anything in place to ensure that the savings are being passed along to the paying consumer? This sounds great on paper, but when I walk into a store, am I coming out with more money, or am I still leaving the same amount of money in that cash register?
Yeah, so this is an area that we certainly have to do a lot more work on. And it's an area that falls within the Consumer Affairs Division of the Ministry of Labor. And I know that they are actively working, doing their price control checks and these kind of things. But we also need the public to get involved. And I said this last year. In order for this to work, the market has to do its part. And that is calling out these vendors that are taking advantage of the situation. Because, as you rightly say, the savings that we gave in import taxes and value-added tax eliminations was not to generate additional profits for the merchant. It was to pass on to the Bahamian people. And we've heard the stories, particularly in respect to clothing, where the duty reductions have not necessarily passed on to the consumer. That is an area where it's very difficult for us as a government to monitor on a daily basis and to ensure that the savings are passed. But we have to rely upon the public to demand that these savings are passed on and identify those vendors who are taking advantage of the situation. Certainly, what we want to do as we get more and more sophisticated in our monitoring of these activities is to ourselves be able to sort of make some general statements about what we expect should have happened in various items. But it is a complicated area.
Yeah, but you projected, or you've committed to removing 100 million in customs duties over 3 years.
Yes.
Which again begs the question, if you're removing these customs duties, what's the point if me as a consumer, if I'm not benefiting from it? Because again, it looks like the monies will just stay in the hands of the merchants.
So again, most of these items, outside of the bread basket, which is price control, most of these items that you're talking about are not price controlled. And so the government can't go in and say to a merchant, well, you must charge no more than this, right? That's where the market comes into play. And the market has to work, all right? Part of the process, too, is educating the vendors, the shop owners, about how they ought to be pricing their product, because a lot of times I find that there's some unsophisticated pricing that
you just slap a price on
three times and that's it, right? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this space, and again, it's not a short-term fix, nor is it an easy thing to do, right? Because we have our traditions and how we do things. But I can say that with respect to the bread basket items, the utilities, I can say that those are in fact working. And one of the retailers, or the food stores, has said in particular that they were surprised at how well that system is working. Right, and they've had to do their own pricing adjustments and moving around things. But again, for those who it was intended to benefit, it is our belief that they are in fact benefiting.
Well, I'll just say this, that it looks good on paper, but from our perspective, if we are able to tangibly see, and you're able to say, well, from what we've been able to discern from data or whatever, this is how people, and I think that's a big concern, Minister, because people, they see it, they hear you, they hear what government is espousing, but people are, asking, well, how am I going to measure this? Is it measurable?
Sure. Well, again, when it comes to the food stores themselves, it's a little more complicated. We don't have that data set at the moment. It is something that I have asked for. But I can tell you, with respect to the electricity and the water, which we can measure because it's kind of fixed. As I say, 79,000 people have benefited from that. That's real dollars.
Yeah, that's certainly good. I'm not one of those 79,000.
Well, you burn your emission every day.
Well, if you're enjoying our discussion, stay tuned. Our show continues right after this quick break here. Hello and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true, and open debate they've been looking for.
And the icon goes to On the Record.
On the Record was born out of a desire to do something different. What we do every day helps our country, it helps our society, it helps to shape the views and opinions.
Listen, what is more dangerous than
Gentlemen, we've got to move very quickly. Let's wrap up.
integrity?
It's all on the record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our discussion begins on the other side of this break. Welcome back. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the Honourable Peter Turnquest, is my guest tonight. Keeping account, understanding the 2019-2020 budget is our topic tonight. Now, there are some areas that you cut back on, but there are some crucial areas in the budget that received increases. Social services, uniform assistance gets more to the tune of $462,000, $2 million in food assistance and foster care. Yet, the Department of Social Services overall budget has been cut by more than half.
Sure.
So how do How do you explain that? How do you justify that?
Yeah, I don't know if it's half, but there has been a cut in the administrative side.
Okay. So the assistance.
Yeah, exactly. The non-assistance or social safety net side. We've tried to be more efficient in respect to how we deal with those financing matters. But we recognize that things have been difficult for a lot of families, and you know, government is not insensitive to the struggle. We know that people are having a difficult time, and as we work on the economy to get it to grow, there is again this lag, and so we have to make sure that people do not fall below the poverty net. Last year we adjusted the school uniform, for instance, and there was a lot of outcry about, not clothing the children, which is not true, by the way. All it meant was that we had to do some shifting around within the ministry to ensure that we met the needs, and we did. I don't think there's any family that can say that they didn't get what they needed in order to prepare their children for school. This year, we've, based upon the experience, we've allocated more. We've also allocated more to food assistance because there's been an increase in the level of people or the number of people who have been coming for assistance. And so we want to make sure that we have adequate resources to meet those needs.
Well, I've got to ask, if the economy is doing well and if we're on the rebound and more people are coming for food assistance, there seems to be some disparity there.
Yeah,
How do you explain that?
It would appear, but it's not necessarily so. A lot of these people, they've always been there. What has been happening is that we've had shifting around of dollars over the years. Where you might have money assigned for rent assistance, for instance, but you vary it out of rent assistance and give it to food assistance, et cetera, just playing games with the numbers. What we're seeing here is an accurate, or as best we can estimate, an accurate view of what the food assistance program cost. Right, so we don't have to go through this, constantly trying to move money around and to make things fit. So you will see in the budget, as you said, you will see where we've reduced the budget items for some items, and then we increased it in food assistance, or we increased it in other parts of the budget to reflect the reality of what we've experienced.
Ministry of Health gets an additional $8 million.
Yes.
Where is that money going?
So the Ministry of Health, Public Health Authority, they've been challenged for any number of years, and we hear it all the time. And one of the things that we are sensitive to is that when people are sick or they're in their most vulnerable state, it is unconscionable that they ought to be uncomfortable, that they ought not to be able to receive the kind of care that they deserve. And so we are putting additional money in the budget to assist the PHA, Ministry of Health, with their upgrades, with the supplies that they need to make sure that we have adequate supplies to compensate or to provide the level of staffing that they need, all of the critical things that they need in order to run effectively.
I've got to ask, how much did they ask for versus what did they get?
I can tell you that they had asked, I think, for an additional $26 million.
Wow, and they got 8?
Yeah. It's again, it's a matter of doing as best we can with the resources that we have. And you would have seen the minister would have mentioned just recently in a press story where we are intending to make the PHA, the hospitals, more efficient. Because one of the things we know is that the hospital on an annual basis earns somewhere around less than $200,000 a year for a hospital.
It's a travesty.
If you were to compare that to a doctor's hospital, it is madness, right? Well, what it means, though, is that there are patients who will come to the PMH for services who have insurance.
And the ability to pay.
And the ability to pay.
We had a whole discussion about that on the show. I have a very strong position on that as well.
What we are doing there is investing in technology, and you'll see that in the capital side. Investing in technology, in processes and systems to ensure that we capture some of this revenue that we're missing. And we believe that that is going to help us to offset this difference that
Minister,
is
you know, our people
required.
will spend $50 in a number house on the way to the hospital and then don't want to pay the registration fee.
gonna touch
But
that.
that's another story for another day. This budget takes into account an anomaly of sorts in over budgeting, allowing for what is called trimming of the budget.
Yes.
Ministry of Finance's budget decreased. So is Inland Revenue, and most notably Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture by some $6 million, going from 28 to 22. You look at that and you say, well, wow, you're taking money from the Ministry of Youth, Ministry of Finance getting trimmed. How did you determine where you would make these cuts, and what has been the effect? I mean, one of the things I saw in your presentation was the fact that you almost had to do a staff audit of the public service to see who was working, who wasn't, you know, people on the payroll. So what areas did you cut in order to, what areas did you cut? How did you determine, for instance, in a ministry like the Ministry of Youth, where these monies were coming from? And are you satisfied that they can function without them?
Sure. So, for instance, the Ministry of Youth, I think it's a bit of a misstatement to say that we've cut them. What we have done is eliminate budget amounts for programs that were not going to be renewed or continued. Okay. For instance, the IAAF, well, we don't have it anymore. The Carnival. Junction Carnival. We don't support it. It's privatized now. So those monies were able to be reduced from the youth sports budget. But there's no cut or significant anyway, in the programs of the ministry. They'll still be able to do everything that they've done before, if not more. In the Ministry of Finance, there are some significant reductions in the Ministry of Finance because we've reallocated some of the central services that we paid for back into the ministries. So you'll see some of that. And in terms of the head count or the payroll, we have looked at our experience versus our budget, and we've seen where, you know, there's for lack of a better word, there's some padding that had been going on. So we've eliminated that
When you say
quote-unquote
padding?
meaning that ministries may decide that, you know, just in case, let me put some more there.
So you said as money as I, just in case.
Exactly. And so we're taking some of that out to ensure that we have a more accurate picture of what's really happening.
Something I've got to ask you about. There's this $39 million debt related to the pension plan of BTC.
Yes.
There's a $39 million that the debt exists. $3 million is being allocated in this budget to put towards that. I've got to ask, how did this happen? And what are we going to do about the remaining $36 million? It's still there.
Actually, you know, one of the things we need to have done is an actual study, evaluation of what the actual liability is, because the truth be told, I believe it's more than that.
Wow.
Yeah. But this
How did this happen?
Well, you know, this is one of the elements of the agreement for the sale of BTC. The then negotiating team agreed to accept the liability for the unfunded portion of the pension plan. Unfortunately, it was not paid out. And so that number has started to grow as people start to now retire. And so that is a commitment that we have, and we're going to have to meet it, just as we have to meet the unfunded liability of the public service pension plan, which is also another big hole that we have to figure out a way how we're going to deal with it going forward. And of course, the government would have put forth some suggestions as to how we would like to see the pension system reformed. But the reality is this is a liability that the government of the Bahamas has, and we have to start paying down on it because it's not going to get smaller, it's getting bigger. And so we've put aside the $3 million this year to start to make some dent into that as we do the studies to determine what the actual liability is. And then once we know that, we'll be able to develop a strategy around it to see how we liquidate it.
Wow, that's just, we've got to take our final break, but that just amazes me. We've got a $39 million debt that's just sitting in the corner. Wow.
You'd be surprised, Jerome, on what is sitting in the corner.
It's gracious. Wow. Welcome back. Well, sorry, we're going to go into a break now. Stay with us. I almost said welcome back. That threw me completely. We are going to take our final break. We've got one more segment right after this. Stay with us. Hello and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true and open debate they've been looking for.
And the icon goes to On the Record.
On the Record was born out of a desire to do something different. What we do every day helps our country, it helps our society, it helps to shape the views and opinions.
Listen, what is more dangerous
Well,
than
gentlemen,
corruption?
we've got to move
is the
very quickly.
illusion
Let's
of
wrap up.
integrity.
It's all On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our discussion begins on the other side of this break. And welcome back. Welcome back this time. This is our final segment. We're talking budget tonight, understanding how monies of the public purse will be spent in the next 12 months. The Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the Honourable Peter Turnquest, is my guest. Just want us to quickly clarify something about social services. We talked about a reduction, but certainly I think it equates to about 2%.
Right.
But $21 million increase in overall assistance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've gone from roughly 16 million to 21 million in social assistance. Again, recognizing that we want to provide that basic safety net for those persons who find themselves challenged while the economy picks up and starts to trickle down to the masses in terms of employment, direct employment or entrepreneurial opportunities.
One of the things you were able to do in the last budgetary period, which continues in many respects, is this fiscal responsibility and the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Want to talk a little bit about how that will affect this budget going forward, specifically the Fiscal Responsibility Council, and what will they do to sort of keep government and government spending and accountability in line?
Sure. So as you say, we enacted the fiscal responsibility legislation last year, which gives us a specific mandate in terms of what our GDP, debt to GDP number ought to be, or deficit to GDP number ought to be. Last year it was targeted 1.8%, and we met that even before the legislation was put into place. This year it is projected to be 1%. So we're coming down with an eventual desire to bring a surplus or a break-even budget in the next year, 2 years. That's our goal, because that will directly translate to the national debt and our ability to pay down that debt to get back down to where we want to be in the 50% range, debt to GDP. But the Fiscal Responsibility Council will serve as sort of a watchdog, if you will. And their job is to look at the government's overall budget to make sure that it is in line with the fiscal responsibility principles that we've outlined, to ensure that we are doing what we say in terms of the budget, doing what we say we were going to do, and it falls in line with the policy priorities that we've espoused. So this council is made up of professionals from various sectors of the economy, and as well as some academicians, and they will they will have the budget, and their job is to look at it and to kind of score it, if you will, to again make sure that we are doing what we say that we're going to do. They will give their feedback back to Parliament in terms of report, which we do not get to interfere with. So there's tremendous transparency and independence built into that project. Again, what it is a tool to ensure that the government does what it says it's going to do, or is exposed, in effect, publicly as to the shortcomings. This is a totally different level of transparency and
Say,
accountability now.
That can be an uncomfortable
Very
situation
uncomfortable.
sometimes. Yeah.
Very uncomfortable, and I anticipate that it will be. Because the fact that it matters, and we see some of the pundits already in the papers, people have different views about how we ought to manage our economy, how we ought to spend our money. And that's a good thing, because anybody that thinks that they know it all is a fool. Right? And I have always said that whether it's good news or bad news, I want to tell the Bahamian people like it is. That's one thing I want to be known for, is to tell the story as it is, because I believe all of us are intelligent enough to make decisions for ourselves and our families once we know the facts.
Looking now to this budget specifically, you've budgeted a total revenue of $2.628 billion for 2019-2020, which represents a $215 million increase over the previous year. At the beginning of the show, we talked about the shortfall.
Yes.
How satisfied are you that you are on track to achieve that? And what can be some of the hurdles, or what can be some of the pitfalls that may cause you not to meet that target?
Sure. So we believe that the pickup is going to come as a result of a full year of the value-added tax at 12%. Last year we had concessions for hotels and for construction projects in particular that would have affected the revenue.
You've eliminated that?
Yes. So we're now going to be fully at 12. We also have the gaming tax situation, which is moving towards final resolution.
You think you get that resolved this year?
We've resolved with the major players. Now there are still some others that have lingering issues that are still being negotiated.
You anticipate a significant inflow?
But yes, so we have an increase in those taxes. We should realize that. We have the taxation from the vacation home rentals that we spoke about. We have the revenue from the charter fees that we expect to be able to collect this year for the first time in any real way. We have the real property tax program that we're rolling out this year, where we anticipate somewhere around $23 million in additional revenue on the conservative side. And then we expect the economy as a whole to continue to grow. So all of those things in combination, we believe will net us the revenue that we anticipate.
Expenditure, $2.530 billion. Equating 19.0% of GDP. Where is the bulk of that expenditure going to be levied? Where can we expect to see government spending those?
So I think the main areas you'll see is in health, education, national security, Ministry of Works. Those are your main...
Ministry of Works mean capital works? Or just
both on the capital works and on the recurrent side. Because all of them need some institutional strengthening. So we're investing in that. You'll also see the digitization transformation project. We're spending money in that because that is going to bring us long-term benefit in terms of bringing down the cost and the efficiency in which government does its work.
Finally, as we wrap up, I know that you are the ministry is rolling out a new budget website.
Yes.
That will house all of these budget documents, all of the information, reports on fiscal performance, etc. When do we expect that, and what do you hope that will do? I mean, outside of you coming here and talking to us, obviously people are gonna want information. But what do you expect that budget website to bring or to do differently?
Sure. So I'm very proud of our communications team. Let me say, we have done some very creative and innovative things over the last year. We've done the quarterly reports, snapshots, as well as the detailed reports that provides all of the information that the Bahamian people need and want. So the question about where the VAT money gone is really a non-question because the information is available. And so what we want to do now is to take that a step further and have a budget website, a website that's dedicated to the budget and the tracking of that, and breaking it down into layman's language so that the average person can understand it. They can go there, get information, they can ask questions and be answered, and again, in language that they can understand. So it's a citizens portal or view into government finances. and to provide them the kind of information that they can understand in small digestible bites. They can have it 24/7 access to it, and get the information they need in order to make decisions for themselves, their families, and their businesses.
Okay. Minister, I want to thank you for coming on. We could have certainly talked for another hour based on all the other questions, but thank you for helping us to understand what is going to be happening over the next 12 months as you have an awesome job ahead of you. I don't envy you, anyone in government for that matter, but certainly when you're dealing with finances and sort of the watchdog of the economy in some ways, it must be a tremendous responsibility. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. And as we go, I just want to wish all of the workers in this country a happy Labor Day.
Yes.
This is, we certainly are a government that supports and believes in the value of work. I know that there's a lot of questions out there as the economy transitions in various ways, but I want the Bahamian people to again recognize that one, this government supports them, that we will protect their interests and their rights and the hard fought for gains that we've achieved in this country for workers on the whole, and there'll be no compromise in that. And so I just want them to enjoy their day. It's about them, it's not about us. And certainly be safe. We remember those who lost their lives last year.
Very tragic last year.
And certainly pray for them and their families.
Minister, thank you very much. I think we could not have ended on a better note. We hope that you've enjoyed our show tonight. Special thanks to my guest, the Honourable Peter Turnquest, as well as my producer and technical staff. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. As always, it's been our pleasure. We'll see you next time.